All right, we'd like to welcome everybody to our Bounce Back webinar today. Looks like we a little slow here on some technology and getting. It's all my 100% my fault and getting some people on here, and we appreciate you joining us today for our final Bounce Back webinar. We've been doing these for the last couple months to try to get some information out to businesses on what they need to do to get back and be successful after the coronavirus has affected each and every business here in this area. And we've got some great presenters today that we'll be interviewing. But I'm gonna turn the time over. I just wanted to kind of lead ahead with we're working on a great project that we're going to be able to continue some of these webinars that we've been doing, starting them in January. So look forward to some big things coming out before the end of the year, and we'll be introducing what we're going to be doing next year. So. Looks like we've got a good group of people here joining us, and we appreciate that. The Idaho Innovation Center and the Small Business Development Center here in Eastern Idaho. We're glad to have everyone that's on here today, and we're thankful to Andex Productions here. They put on quite the show here, and we so appreciate them being willing to help us get these out to the community here in Eastern Idaho. But let me introduce Tyler Price. He's a consultant with the Small Business Development Center, and he'll be doing the interviewing today. And our first guest will be Will Jensen with the RBDC out of Rexburg. And what an expert in the field, and you'll see what everything that he's put together on the statistics that he's put together. So Tyler and Will, take it over.
Yeah, Will, come on in, please. So thank you, Bryan. So Will, you're with the RBDC. What does that stand for?
Yeah, it's the Research and Business Development Center.
And it's located up there in Rexburg?
Yep, downtown Rexburg. We actually share offices with the city. We take over about a quarter of the building.
Great.
With what we do there.
Yeah. And what do you do there?
Yeah, so we are a nonprofit entity, and we've got started clear back in 2006. We used to be the Eastern Idaho Entrepreneurial Center. Since then, we've done a lot more than just entrepreneurial work. We're doing engineering research, we've done ag research, we've done all sorts of things. All of it using university students, and that's kind of our nonprofit mission, is provide some educational / real world work experience for university students. And so we've worked with ISU, we've worked with students down in Utah, we've worked mostly in Rexburg. We use a lot of BYU Idaho students, and roughly about 1,000 or so a year, roughly.
Wow.
Lately. So, and all of that's online right now. And we've been working with online students for many years. So this transition to doing everything online hasn't really been too painful for us.
Yeah, and I'll just put a plug in here for what the RBDC does. I've used them for marketing, for research, and these students just do an amazing job, and their deliverable has always been very top notch. So any small business, medium business, large business that wants a team to do any sort of research, I highly recommend getting a hold of the RBDC. Now,
Thanks.
one thing though that you guys have been doing on a weekly basis is
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about this.
You know, once COVID started, I got looking around at some of the data that was out there about the economy, and one thing that frustrates me with a lot of the data is that it's only available on a monthly basis, and it's usually old.
Yeah.
And too old to even make any business decisions off of, because you're trying to make decisions today.
Yes.
Off what's happening today and what's going to happen tomorrow and the next day. And when you've got 6 months old data to look at, in the economy that we're in right now, that's not super helpful.
You could be out of business.
You could be. Mm-hmm. So I put together a team of students. I'm on the we just finished the third team of students working on this project, where we put together an economic report. We were doing it weekly. We've now gone to every other week, and that's the pace that we're producing things now. But they're putting together usually 60 to 80 slides of economic data. And again, it's got to be somewhat world premiere. They've got to go out and collect it. A lot of it is not available through government sources, or if it is available through government sources, people don't know where to get it. And we try to analyze it in a way that is a little more telling a story rather than just static data that doesn't say anything at all. So
No, and I appreciate that because a lot of times economists are hindsight 2020 people, right?
Oh yeah.
And so the fact that you're an economist, I mean, that's what you studied.
Yep.
And
I'm an economist.
and you've been doing this for a while, but I really appreciate, as a small business owner myself, really appreciate the fact that you are trying to be as real time as you can with this.
That's the goal.
So the kids then, or the college kids, because they're not all kids, but anyone younger than me is a kid, right? So, but they're calling, who are they calling? What is the criteria that you sit down as a team and decide to report on?
That's a good question. So we're actually leveraging some of the skills that they have in utilizing social media.
Yeah.
Meaning they're on Facebook a lot. So I just said, well, you're already comfortable with Facebook. Let's see what we can get out of Facebook. So we're doing polls, a lot of social media polls. And if you're frequent any of the local Facebook groups that are kind of community-based, you'll probably see some polls from some of our students on there. We found that you can get, on interesting topics, in a few hours, hundreds of responses.
Wow.
And we've used that even on large, big international clients we've had at the RBDC, big retailers, big box retailers that we've done projects for. We were able to, using this same approach, using social media polls, accurately predict market share for them that they had been buying off of Nielsen within 1.5 percentage points. I mean, it was
considerably less investment, I would assume.
And over a course of a couple of days rather than whatever amounts of money Nielsen's been pouring into it. So if you're not leveraging those polls on Facebook, just ask simple questions to your market about what you're doing and what works and what doesn't work for your business, you should use it. And we're using it to get consumer insights that's real time. Again, not available anywhere else.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool.
No, that's really cool because I think it just kind of speaks to the fact that anybody that is in business, if you aren't pivoting or at least trying to pay attention to the relationship with the client or customers or whatever, it's not business as usual anymore.
No, it's not.
And these kids come in with some savviness because Nielsen reporting, I mean, they will go out of business if they don't start taking some of this approach.
They will.
And they've been around for a long, long time. So,
Yep.
So very interesting. Now, how does somebody find this reporting?
It's through the RBDC website, so rbdcenter.org, and then you go to publications, and from there it should be pretty straightforward.
Right.
And so there's, dozens of them now since we started doing this that you can look back at the archives on. And I would encourage anyone to go back and do that.
Yeah.
The archives, we've asked different questions every time. We've got a lot of people looking at this report. The other day I had 2 bank presidents reach out to me and say, thanks so much for this report. I can't believe, we can get access to this kind of information. It's very helpful.
Yeah.
And so it's, people in financial services, just regular, entrepreneurs and business owners of all types of industries can find some benefit out of it. It really helps understand what's behind the motivation for consumer spending and confidence and things like that. So.
Yeah. No, and I've gone through it multiple times, or I don't go through it each week or every other week, but I've gone through it a few times. One of the reports was people moving from other states.
Yeah.
Which I found interesting, and are you finding, and I don't know if your questions have been around that, the people that are coming from other states, are they bringing their businesses here, or are they just coming here because they can't stand in some of the politics of maybe their state?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above, Tyler. So there's a slide that I've got up right now. I don't know if I can share it with the viewers or not, but but this is a little bit old. This one was, I tolerated the age of this just because it was good data, and I think if anything, the flow of people from California to Idaho is probably increased rather than decreased. So back in 2016, which is what this report was showing from Idaho Transportation Department and the DMV, they looked at driver's licenses being surrendered. And back then it showed 44% of the driver's licenses surrendered from other states as people moved into Idaho were coming from California.
Yeah.
And anecdotally, talking to realtors that are all over the state, I was on a call earlier today with someone up in Chalice, and they were talking about people from California coming in, taking ownership of businesses and property there. And there's just a general sense of, I think, urgency to go somewhere safer, somewhere with a little more space. In fact, we did a poll on social media specifically about that. Why were people moving to Idaho? So in this one, you can see the safer community, especially in Ada County, that picked up a lot of interest from or a lot of responses up there of people that have moved in recently, relocated to Ada County. But even in Bonneville County, that's still a popular response. Just a change of scenery, affordability, and definitely new jobs, which Idaho Falls has been a booming labor market area for a long time, one of the fastest growing population-wise and also job-wise. And our unemployment rate's near the bottom. I think the last numbers I looked at, we were neck and neck with Utah for some of the lowest unemployment rates in the state or in the country, and quickest recovery, quickest rebound in the country. So.
Yeah. So out of the reports that you've been doing, the data that you're gathering, what's been the most interesting report? Because there's multiple things going on here. You talk about permits for businesses, permits for building. I mean, there's a bunch of different things, but what's the one that you find the most interesting?
That's hard. That's like asking which kid you like the most.
I can answer that question, just so you know. And it does change from time to time.
Here's one, crime rates. It's been interesting to see that crime rates have taken a drop.
That's good.
That's
so the people
a
from
positive
California are behaving themselves.
They're law-abiding Californians
we
that
like
are moving
that.
in, hopefully, or maybe they're the only ones committing the crimes. I'm not sure. But, but yeah, that's been interesting to see the crime rates dropping. This is an interesting picture showing the change in initial unemployment claims. So since the beginning of COVID until now, you can see that giant spike when the shutdown happened. I think you remember that, don't you?
Yeah. You're trying to get me.
I think you remind the governor about that
I think I did
occasionally
say something
too.
To Governor Little. Yes.
But anyways, so you can see that there was a big spike in unemployment claims there. And I was an economist for the Department of Labor, and I was an economist for the Department of Labor in the last recession, just as we were exiting that last recession. And it was still, 3 o'clock on any given day of the week, I had Channel 8 calling me up to ask me about what the latest trends were. And we saw nothing like this back then. Such a sharp onset so quickly. It happened so quickly, no one knew what was going to happen. And fortunately, we've seen a lot of recovery since those early, initial unemployment claims, but we're still about double what we normally would be around this time of year. So there's still a number of industries that are suffering from this whole downturn in the economy.
And some of that is government related, in my opinion.
Yeah, it could be.
And some could be consumer confidence or just ability not to do certain things. Supply chain is an issue for a lot of things. But where is consumer confidence in spending right now, do you think?
I think it's pretty healthy in eastern Idaho. And as we've asked kind of, the consumer confidence related questions in those polls, there are a lot of people that have just changed the way they do their purchasing. And they're still purchasing a lot. And, when I talk to banks, some of the bigger ticket items out there at the very beginning when these initial unemployment claims spiked, banks all over the place, financial institutions everywhere were very concerned the sky was going to fall on them and that they would have just a dismal year. And it's been the exact opposite of that, where they thought that they'd see their business cut in half, it's doubled or tripled. And you go talk to some of these big ticket item retailers like RV dealers, recreational equipment in general, ATVs and things. I was out camping right after the stimulus checks dropped in bank accounts, and there were just people on brand new Polaris ATVs circling the campground one after another. And so some of those bigger ticket items are things we call them durable goods, and those are things that people tend to not spend a lot of money on during recessions. So I think the thing we have going for us in this downturn is that everyone expects things to get better.
Yeah.
And they're positive about the future. Their spending habits show that they don't think this is going to last forever. And at the very beginning of it, my thoughts were that it would be at least a 9-month recession. And if we had more spikes of COVID cases, more waves of them, then it could go on 18 months. And I think I'm pretty accurate in the 18-month category. Right. But the economy is growing again. Like the recession is over technically, as we see increases in GDP after the bottom was hit. So technically it's over, but there's still the symptoms of it, which we see in labor market information pretty easily.
Right. So what industries do you see as being hit the hardest? Maybe a little bit of why that was the case, and then, you know, because I look at, honestly, local leaders, and I'm not trying to bash on local leaders, but they really take it out on small businesses in terms of the standards that they expect small business to work at versus big box stores. Oh yeah, no, they're fine. That's how I interpret it sometimes. But anyway, in that, what industries specifically are really hurting right now? What would be their strategy to rebound, do you feel, things like that?
Strategy to rebound, I'll kind of talk about that first, is listen to your consumers and what they want. If they want curbside pickup, you better figure out a way to do curbside pickup. Yep. If they are not comfortable coming in, if your employees are not wearing masks, then by all means adapt to that.
Yeah.
Just listen to your customers. And if you don't have a way to listen to your customers, why haven't you been figuring out a way to listen to your customers in the past? I've talked to business owners that are sitting on hundreds and hundreds of emails of their customers, and they've never bothered to reach out to them to ask questions about what their needs are or how they can serve them better. And so look at your resources that way. And I mentioned Facebook polls. Utilize that. Go out and talk to people on Facebook. It actually represents a pretty good chunk of the population. There are going to be some skewed results depending on where you ask those questions, what kind of groups you're asking them in, and the setting you're asking them in. But there are ways to answer that question. As far as the industries go that are impacted the most, obviously the ones that are restricted, you know, for one reason or another, government's put restrictions on them. Those are going to be ones that are really tough right now. They're hard to get past those restrictions. Leisure and hospitality related industries are certainly feeling the pinch here. So, you know, we have, it's been an interesting year for Eastern Idaho, Idaho Falls area, because there's a lot of travelers that typically come through here. You can see the slide that I'm showing now shows the number of emplanements at Idaho Falls Regional Airport.
And emplanements means people that have
getting on the plane.
Got on a plane. Okay.
Yeah. And in April, it was next to nothing. Since then, it's increased, but it's still half of what we normally would have. There was a slide here that showed visitors to national parks.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. So, but anyway, you're bringing it up. So.
Yeah, so, you know, July time period when visitors started coming back to national parks, we jumped past where we were in 2019. We set records for the number of visitors in this last half of the year. And then while the national parks were closed, the state parks, some of them were still open.
Yeah.
And they were like absorbing all of the people that normally would be going to the national parks. So we saw places like Harriman State Park just get, you know, a ton of people coming through there. Yeah. So it was hopefully people are buying more locally now. I know that there's a lot of a lot of people are driven to online purchases and buying from Amazon and these big box stores, but hopefully they're finding ways to shop local too, because maybe they feel more comfortable shopping local.
Yeah.
I live in Rigby, and I know things are, I'd be curious to hear how things are going for places like Scotty's in Rigby or other small retailers. When I've been in those stores, they seem like they're very occupied with customers.
Yeah.
And hopefully it has been a good thing for them. And I know that there's a lot of industries out there that they've just had phenomenal growth this year too. So it's hit and miss. It's unfortunate, but I think, you know, there's probably 10, 15, maybe 20% of business out there that have been hit really hard. And the other ones may have had the best year they've ever had.
Yeah.
Companies like Melaleuca, I bet if you looked at if Melaleuca could peel back the curtain and show how sales have been this year, given the mix of products that they sell, I bet they've had one of their best years ever.
Probably.
So,
Well, so do you guys reach out to them on any of these questions, or they
I
try to keep
haven't.
it-
I'd be curious to.
Yeah, get those kids calling them.
Yeah.
So, because that's interesting because it is a combination of consumer goods, but it's also people having their own business within Melaleuca's business, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, no, that's anyway, real cool stuff. Yeah, because like hotels are getting killed, but people buying RVs or doing whatever, we still got record numbers of people visiting the parks. So,
Yes, and the hotels. Let's see if I can find the hotel slide. You mentioned them. I did have some hotel figures here, and they've taken a hit. You know, in most cases, at the low, they're between 50 and 75% down from where they normally are, and things have improved a little bit, but they've got a long ways to come. The business travelers haven't returned yet, and apparently there's a few people that do things by Zoom nowadays more than they ever have, and that'll be an interesting. That industry is going to have to figure out what their place is now as far as business travel goes. It could change things.
I think people like it. I still think we like to get together, right?
I agree.
But there's been a lot more effectiveness of my time because of the ability to Zoom and that. So. No, that's pretty cool. So then, what's next? Because again, in my opinion, you're the economist that's trying to do real time stuff. So, is this something even as the economy? Well, I hate to say it that way, but even as COVID, let's say it that way, COVID starts to dissipate, these types of reporting, is this going to be ongoing?
Yeah, I think so. I think. If we can get access to real-time data, I think everyone has realized during this whole COVID pandemic that real-time data is valuable. And the old school method of going to the Federal Reserve to get your data is not going to cut it.
Yeah.
And you think about the access to data that the Federal Reserve had pre-internet days, pre-big data day, pre-big data. It's a night and day difference between the data that they had access to make decisions about the economy and what direction it should be going, and what Walmart and Amazon and Apple and Google have. I mean, if the Federal Reserve could see what Google has access to,
they might be scared.
They'd be blown away.
Yeah.
And businesses, I think the expansion that we had in the economy over the last more than a decade, I think a lot of it was the fact that we're making decisions based off real-time data now. Instantaneous data. And that allows people to just make better decisions. So hopefully the next expansion will be even longer. And if we can have better information to make decisions off of, we'll have less economic downturns.
Yeah.
And the access to data is just increasing every day. So.
Well, and I got one more little question. We're talking about big companies that aren't even regional, but you have, if we look at Disneyland, so they're closed, Disney World, they're open. They're kind of the same thing. So, I don't even know where my question's going, but just kind of the hypocrisy of government, I guess, at some level. So how do we get, and it still translates down into the small business, but I'm just using this as an example of how come we can have one and not the other, and yeah, I mean, anyway, I don't know where I'm going with that, to be honest.
I don't either,
just as you're talking, I'm just like, part of me is fuming. It's like, man, Will, I'm grateful that you have this real-time data, because small businesses can make real decisions, and they better listen to their customer and they better get after it. But then we have government in the way.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I don't know how to solve that problem. I don't have an answer to that question.
Yeah.
I know everyone wishes they did, but if anything, I think it's probably wise for businesses to have a contingency plan and to think about threats that come from sources that they don't have control over.
We never thought about this before.
And do that all the time. It's talk about Porter 5 Forces analysis. Michael Porter is a famous professor at Harvard Business School, and they talk about threats in that, and if government's the threat, then you got to study that. You got to research that and understand more about that before you can make really good decisions for your own business.
Yeah.
So,
well, I know locally a lot of mayoral races will be in 2021, and city council races will be in 2021, and so those can be things that businesses and consumers can be looking at too. But anyway, I really appreciate Will. I like him so much, I shaved my head to be like him because I knew that he was coming on.
I noticed you were sporting a new hairstyle.
Well, you've got the best dome I've ever seen, and I just wanted to see what mine would look like.
Thank you.
So again, Will, where could they get to this data? And I know this is only a very small portion of it. Where can they get this data?
Yeah, let's go. I guess kind of if you can see that screen, it's kind of small down there, bottom left. rbdcenter.org.
RBDC, rbdcenter.org. Okay. Yeah. So that's a great place that you can go and get that. And where do they find it on the site?
So you just click on the publications tab, and from there it should be pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we really appreciate Will. We'll have you back as we make some announcements and stuff because, I just love the fact that as an economist, you're not hindsight 2020 economist. You're real time. Hey, these are some concerns, or these are some great signs and things like that. So.
Happy to do it.
Yeah. Well, all right, I'm kicking you off.
All right, see ya.
Thank you. And then our next guest is Holly Behling. I got it. Yeah, please have a seat. And Holly, so you mentioned you were IRS. What was the word that you said?
I am an enrolled agent, so I'm licensed to represent taxpayers before the IRS.
Okay. So you got to be pretty sharp for that. I don't imagine they just give that out to anybody.
No.
So there's probably testing or schooling or what?
Definitely testing.
Yeah.
I had 2 solid days of just tax of testing.
That sounds fun.
It was.
Yeah, well,
I enjoy my job.
That's great. That's great. And what exactly do you do then?
I do tax preparation for individuals and businesses. I will do representation work for them as well, meaning helping them lower their tax debt with the IRS. You know, doing the communication because I have special numbers that I can call.
Yeah, very good. And then
I do bookkeeping as well.
Okay, so you do that locally, or do you have clients outside of Eastern Idaho?
I have clients all over the country.
All over the country, great. So, and Holly will be on the Innovation Center course or class that they're offering tomorrow. Mm-hmm. She'll be the only one talking, so you won't hear me talking. And she has a great presentation, so I just want to plug that.
Thanks.
That if you can go onto the Innovation Center's Facebook page, we'll put a link there if it isn't already. And anyway, it's going to be done through Zoom, and it's a presentation, correct? So,
yes.
So you're dealing a little bit with things like PPP loans and whatnot, is that correct?
I've had to deal with a lot of questions regarding the stimulus, PPP loans, EIDL, all that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So then, and it's all kind of changed from beginning to where we are now and even more, right?
And it's still changing.
And it's still changing. So you're trying to deal with a moving target. What's something that you're recommending to small businesses that took PPP? Is it trying to push it into 2021 or what?
No, in fact, I don't want them to push it into 2021. A lot of accountants that I've spoken with want people to report their full payroll expenses and recognize the grant money that they received from the PPP. Well, I guess it's loan money. Until it's forgiven, it's loan money as income, because then their payroll amount on the tax return will match all those 941s for their payroll tax returns that they've sent in.
Right.
If those don't coincide, then the IRS may say, hey, we want to audit you.
Yeah.
Why is there this discrepancy? The discrepancy would come in because the PPP loan has said you don't recognize those expenses that PPP money went for.
Right.
Well, if you recognize the PPP money as income and the expenses as actual expenses, it nets each other out and it doesn't matter anyway.
Right. And just so businesses know, and I'm sure they already know, what were things that they could use the PPP money for?
Mortgage interest, utilities, rent, and payroll, obviously.
Yeah.
It was payroll protection.
Yeah, it was payroll protection. So with your clients, do you feel that that's been the difference for some of them in keeping doors open? I mean, what was kind of the gist of things that clients have said?
I truthfully haven't had very many that actually got it.
Okay.
A lot of my clients, they wanted to, but banks were so confused at the beginning. And if they were a sole proprietorship and they didn't have employees, the banks were scratching their heads and saying, how do we issue these?
Right.
And by the time they got it all figured out, the money was gone.
Yeah.
And the money went really, really fast the
Right.
first time. And then they added more funds to it. And then a few more people got it. But if you didn't have a bank, a loan officer that was really savvy on how to get it, it made it really difficult for some really small businesses, especially if it was a sole person,
Right.
to actually get it.
Yeah. And then the idle loans, why don't you, because most people do focus more on the PPP.
They do focus on the PPP.
Did you have clients that took advantage of the idle loans at all?
I actually took advantage of that personally.
Yeah.
And it is a loan, it's not a grant. That one's not forgivable. They did have the idle advance
Right.
that you could get, and that was $1,000 per full-time employee that you have, up to $10,000. Well, that money had to be offset with the PPP loan. So if you received an idle advance and you also received a PPP loan, you have to reduce the amount that you're requesting forgiveness for by the amount of the idle advance, because
Right.
that is a grant,
And that's up to $10,000.
up to $10,000.
Okay. Yeah. And that seems fair, right? At least in theory.
It's for small businesses, and a lot of the small businesses that was probably ideal for.
Right.
And I specialize in the small business, so
Right.
I deal a lot more with them. I don't deal with the Walmarts of the world.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's probably good. So.
Yeah, it's very good.
So now they're talking about second round. Is the second round? What are you seeing there?
So what I'm
and I know that's a
seeing-
hard question to even answer.
It's a moving target.
Yeah.
I just watched an interview with an individual today, a Republican out of Missouri, I believe, and he is not in favor of what they're trying to do right now. In fact, he's going against it. But from what I can tell, they're wanting another round of stimulus checks, like most people received back in April
Right.
timeframe. But these are smaller. These are $600 to $700. So these are half of what they were in March,
Right.
April. Everything shut down in March. We got the
Yeah.
money in April. And they are talking about funding the PPP loan program again. I believe the amount was $300 billion.
Wow. Now the second round, did they use all that money? Do you know?
That's gone.
That's gone. Okay. All right. So $300 billion, and I'm sure they'll have qualifiers for
They
that.
do. It looks like they're trying to expand it so that some nonprofit groups, 501c6, which is probably SBDC qualifies under that, that they would be able to qualify for it. And so they definitely are trying to expand the number of people, number of businesses that will actually qualify for the new PPP loan.
And so some of the clients that did
If
get
it passes.
Yeah, if it passes. So some of your clients that did get the PPP, were you able to get them forgiven?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have not heard of a single loan that was under $50,000 that has not been forgiven.
Right.
So if they have a loan that's under that threshold, I would get it in. I would apply for the forgiveness. Actually, for anybody that
Right.
has a PPP loan, I would be applying for forgiveness now. Don't let it go into 2021.
Right. Okay. Because I have heard people say, well, maybe push it to 2021. That's why I was asking that
I wouldn't
question.
do
And
it.
I couldn't think of the advantage or disadvantage. It seems just you're pushing your problem down the road maybe a little bit. if
You
anything.
are, but again, it's been a lot of questions. Do people understand how to do the forgiveness? There seems to be a lot of irregularities in what banks are requiring. I have heard of some banks that just require a report from their from the business's accountant showing what they had paid. How many hours did your employees work? How much were they paid? What was their gross wage? Other banks are asking for actual photocopies of the paychecks.
Right.
But the paychecks aren't the gross payroll.
Right.
Because they've had the taxes withheld.
Yeah.
That's just your net.
So,
But that's what some banks are requiring.
so people that didn't get PPP or idle, is there any sort of a tax credit, any advantage for people that didn't?
If you received the PPP loan, there is no credit. If you did not, yes, there are.
Okay.
I've been preparing a letter for my clients, and I let them know that I'm going to have to ask them, did you have COVID? Did your family have COVID? How did it affect your business? Because there's a new form, so I believe the number is 7202.
Wow. Who comes up with the phone number anyway?
I
Yeah.
wish I knew. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
They always have to add forms to us every
Yes.
year. That's how come I have to do continuing education.
Yes.
And this draft that I saw just came out on November 30th. So it's really, really new.
Yeah.
And you have to say how many days were you affected because you had to watch your children because you couldn't get them into daycare.
Yeah.
How many days was your business closed because you yourself had COVID? So there's that credit for sole proprietors on the individual tax return. That's on the 1040. For businesses, there's actually a credit on the 941 that they can get. There's actually a few of them. So there's one that's the sick leave credit, and that's if the person themselves was paid while they were out.
Right.
And the amount will depend on whether it was related to their work because they have to work because they're like frontline worker, a nurse
Right.
or a doctor or something like that. There's one for family leave, and that's if you had to take care of a child or a parent or something that had COVID. And then there's an employee retention credit that people can get as long as they did not reduce their workforce, didn't reduce hours, and didn't cut the wages.
Right. No, it was definitely tricky. I mean, it still kind of is, and anyway, I don't. There's positives that come from it, but there definitely is a lot of head scratching about it too. So
There is, and I would recommend every business, if you're a business owner, find a tax professional this year.
Yeah.
Do not trust the TurboTax because
Yeah.
TurboTax works for a lot of people, but sometimes if you misinterpret their question that they're asking, then your tax return is going to be wrong.
Yeah, yeah. So tomorrow then, with the Innovation Center, you're going to be going through probably about an hour-long course or longer.
I think it's a little bit longer, about
90 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And just will there be a question and answer part of that too? Yeah, there'll be a question and answer. So want to plug Holly a little bit on this. Very knowledgeable. If you are in trouble with the IRS, she'll go and argue in your
do my
case
best.
too. But anybody, especially this year, we do have a question. What's the question?
Let me just read it for you. The question came in through the chat line. Holly, what are you seeing and hearing about increased business and taxpayer scrutiny by the IRS? I have heard the incoming administration is looking at ramping up the IRS staffing and examinations. Is this what you are hearing?
I haven't heard about an increase in examinations. I sure hope they get more people working at the IRS and decrease the hold times. I mean, these hold times are ridiculous. Right now, the IRS is definitely understaffed. They need more people. I have not heard about new examinations from the new administration. However, I do know that they are talking about trying to repeal all or part of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that started in 2018. So everybody might be looking at a tax increase in, probably not in 2021. It took President Trump a year to get that through, so it could take, a year or two for that to be repealed or adjusted. I would just keep watching and see what Congress does. If you are going to be examined for an audit of any sort, get a tax professional in your corner.
Yeah.
Great. And I'll have Frosty put her email, Holly's email in there. And once again, we do have the class tomorrow that Holly will be going through all of this in depth. And to register for that, go to idahosbdc.org, and it's under the trainings. And you can get registered for it, same place that you did for this one. So yeah, she'll be going much more into depth on this tomorrow. We've only got 10, 15 minutes today with Holly, but we'll have an hour and a half tomorrow with her. So
Yeah, and it'll include even more than the PPP loan.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate your willingness to come on, and I do know that the topic it has changed significantly, continues to change, isn't definitive, but no, I appreciate that we do have people in the area that are knowledgeable, and look forward to your class tomorrow. So
Thank you much.
all right, well, we're gonna excuse Holly and see her tomorrow, right? And then our last amazing guest, we've had 3 amazing guests. Last but not least is Ranae Oswald.
Hello.
How are you, my friend?
I'm so good.
Good.
The last time we did this, we were in the bug.
We were in the bug, yeah, which is how it should always be.
This is a little more comfortable.
Yeah.
Nothing about the bug,
Yeah,
but you know,
whatever.
what should I say?
It's a little cold in the wintertime.
Yeah, thanks for not making me go in the
Yes,
wintertime.
yeah. But Ranae, you and your husband are second generation.
Third
generation.
You got it right.
Oh, that's right. Owning Oswald Service and Repair.
Yes.
And speaking specifically to the mechanic world, then auto repair, what has COVID impacted, or what have you seen? Because it looks to me like you could hire a few more mechanics, quite honestly.
Have you tried to get into the shop lately,
Yeah.
Tyler? Is that why? So we're doing well now, but I will tell you that March, April, May were rough. Even into June, just a little bit. You know, we are on track. We have 2 locations, so we have one in Idaho Falls and one in Rexburg.
Yep.
Idaho Falls will finish the year lower than where we were in 19. So it's going to, it definitely has affected us, and it affected us mostly those first 3 months. Partly because, for one, nobody was going anywhere, so they didn't really need their cars. We were an essential business, but nevertheless, nobody was going, anywhere.
Yeah.
So, and it scared people to go out, and we were prepared. We had contactless appointments where you could book online, where you could drop off your keys, where you really didn't have to have any interaction or even come into the office. Thank goodness that we were prepared for that. And people did take advantage of that and are still taking advantage of that to some extent. But we really, that first little bit did hit us significantly enough that it actually scared Kevin enough that he went into the shop. We did have a little transition where we lost a technician, but even when we replaced that, he stayed in the shop, so we had an extra tech. So July we had a big uptick, but we also had an extra body in the shop to kind of help us overcome that. And we'll be just about even, but it definitely affected what we were doing for 2020. Rexburg, on the other hand, stayed about stable. Now we treat them a little bit more like a startup because we've only had them there for 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
So the baseline wasn't as high,
Right.
So we're doing fine as far as being able to meet our previous, what we've done previously. But all in all, we're about at the same level as we were, which I'm so grateful for because it looked like it wasn't going to be like that.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, I mean, that's a win when you look at 3-4-ish months of, oh my gosh, what's going on?
Yeah, right.
And so basically you should have gone to Hawaii for that time maybe and then
That
come
would have
back
been
and
nice.
worked.
Oh, dang it, I missed my opportunity.
Hindsight's but I guess Hawaii wasn't accepting people anyway.
That's true.
Anyway.
Well, we're at a position now where, just like you said, the shop is busy, and we were previously looking at adding another location. So we're back to that plan.
Yeah.
So that's good.
That's exciting. That's
Yeah.
really exciting. So, dealing with the struggles that COVID has brought, figuring out ways to help the clients so they don't have to have face-to-face interaction and still get their work done. And so those are the types of things in terms of an example, and then growing still. I mean, that's amazing. So another thing you do is the Eastern Idaho Entrepreneur, did I put that in the right order?
You did.
Podcast.
Yes.
And you've done 80...
Today, my 86th episode dropped.
Episodes,
yeah.
yes. So, and how do people find that podcast?
You can find East Idaho Entrepreneurs Podcast on any major player. There's also a website, which is East Idaho Entrepreneurs, and there's a blog that is associated with each of those episodes, but they're all on the website. or on whatever player you use. You can even ask Alexa and she will play it for you.
She will find it.
Yes.
Good. So you talk to a lot of small, medium, even large businesses. And does the topic of COVID ever come up in discussion with any of the people that you've been talking with?
Oh yeah, we just since March, I've interviewed, I think, around 31 or 32 businesses, and you have to understand they're from, you know, one end of the spectrum to the other. But one of the first businesses that I interviewed as we were moving into shutdown was Brian Wood of Wood's Funeral Home.
Yeah.
So you think about what happened to the funeral industry, their whole world got turned upside down. That week that I was talking to him, the local LDS church had closed their buildings to have anything happen there. And so he was like, I don't know what we're gonna do, you know, I'll bring him to my place. But it's been fun to see what has happened in his industry with their particular business, how they've adapted and gone to, you know, who ever thought they would be watching a funeral on Zoom?
Yeah.
You know, and so just some of the things that we've had to do to adapt. That was really interesting to talk to him at that time. I also interviewed Kent Lott, who has Royal Theaters.
Oh, wow.
Now imagine.
Yeah.
So he was just in the throes of everything being closed. They just remodeled the Paramount.
Right.
And so they were still in the process of remodeling, and so he was like, it's okay because our doors, it's okay that they're closed because we can do this stuff. But it was a little frightening to think what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And his big thing was, yeah, the doors are closed and it's tough, but Hollywood is also shut down.
Yeah.
Films that are going to be coming out of there are going to be delayed. I don't know what the future is going to look like. And now we're kind of seeing what that looks like. And so, man, you know, my heart just aches and breaks for his industry because that has been such a tough thing.
Yeah, because that's something that we look forward to as families and friends.
Haven't
and,
you missed it?
Yeah, going and watching a movie. Now there's content being streamed. Obviously, that's a.
But it's different.
But it's different. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, anyway. It's
And
not
there's
as fun.
traditions around it, especially with the holidays, and
Yeah.
we're all going to adapt,
Yeah,
but
'cause
it's just kind of a bummer.
We're that jerky family that goes on Christmas Day, so someone has to work on Christmas
Because
Day
of you.
because we go and
Well,
watch
you're
a
not
movie.
there alone usually,
Yeah,
so.
yeah, no, there's a few of us there that are causing those young kids to have to work on Christmas, but they get paid a little extra,
They
I
do,
think. So,
right. Another one of the another one of the individuals that I interviewed about that time was Drew Durant from Yellowstone Playhouse. So I don't know if you're familiar with them,
Oh.
but they have a live playhouse. They
Up
do
by-
plays in
by
Island
the
Park.
Island Park,
Yeah, and they also serve dinner. So he was in this place where it was like, ugh, and it's a buffet style dinner.
Oh,
And so he knew he couldn't do dinner, but he went ahead and did the show, and they did the best they could with social distancing and everything that they could. But what an odd year for them as
Yeah.
well. So it's really interesting, and I have story after story that I could tell you, but definitely I have seen and heard businesses going through this grieving process of, gosh, this is the way that we used to do it, and now we're doing it different, and how are we going to do that, and are we going to recover from the end of this?
Yeah.
But, you know, I can't think of any of the 31 businesses that I've interviewed since COVID hit us that isn't there anymore.
right.
You know,
That's-
they're all trying to make it, and some of them are restaurants and
Yeah.
hard things. One of them was the Villa downtown, Chuck Lingerak. Well, a lot of their customers worked in those buildings,
Right.
and now they're remote. And so what do? Well, Chuck was getting literally on a bicycle and delivering food to downtown. So you just figure it out.
That is it. I mean, businesses have to interact with the client, and Will kind of touched on that too, and know what they want. Don't ignore the emails, you know. And then, you know, Chip's a good guy, and he just got on his bike.
got on a bike.
Figured it out. Probably not ideal, but better than not getting the sale at the same time.
Oh yeah,
So,
you just have to figure it out.
yeah. So I always ask for people because you also have a coaching program that you probably didn't want me to talk about.
Oh,
but-
I love you talking about
Okay, good.
anything about me,
yeah,
Tyler.
yeah. Ranae, it's the Ranae Oswald show. But you know, you have a lot of good wisdom there, and you're helping primarily in the healthcare because that's an industry that you know inside and out too. But what's the advice then to you know, because there's the dream of startup, there's the the case of the Yellowstone place where they just invested all this money and they're going right into the season, and then it's like, oh, just
Our
got
season's
kicked right
totally
in the stomach.
different.
So I guess what's the advice to the startup and the businesses involved and everything out there right now?
Well, you know, it feels a little contrary what I'm going to say, but it really is an exciting time. We know we saw so much innovation and everything happen in 2008 when we had our last, you know, real big downturn. Huge businesses that we all know happened because of what happened in 2008.
Yeah.
The same thing is going to occur with this one, and I don't know what that's going to look like yet, but it's been fun to see the businesses that we interact with be innovative and come up with things like, I would have never thought that for a while primarily our business would be contactless.
Yeah.
I get it that we have to, you know, we're touching your cards. The techs don't usually have much interaction with the customers, but our guys up front totally do.
Yeah.
And so, you know, to think that it was like we almost could have just had a kiosk outside, you know, like a little vending machine,
Right.
you know, something. We didn't really need a human to do that part, but you know what? We really do need that human contact.
Yeah.
I need that, in my case, I need that mechanic, that person I trust to be able to advise me on what to do and talk to a human. So I don't know. I think that there's a lot of opportunity. I don't think that this should give us any kind of pause about I shouldn't do what I was going to do. It might have put a little pause on it, but I think it should still go forward. Much like what we're doing, looking at a third location.
Yeah.
We thought it would be in March.
Yeah.
Well, it might be next March. Who knows what it will be? But it's given us pause to look at things a little bit differently and realize, yeah, this is still the way we want to go. And apparently that's what we needed.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to going up and watching a play up
I
at
know,
that.
right?
Because I think that's the thing that also happened during this is that we looked at local businesses. The national big box, they never skipped a beat, you know, and not good for them, right? But I think people really, there were whole Facebook pages locally that were about local restaurants that needed support.
Yeah, people
and-
just
and
really
people
jumped
went and
in,
did
didn't
that,
they?
right?
Yeah.
And the fact that you talked about the Yellowstone what's the name of it?
Yeah, Yellowstone Playhouse.
Playhouse. It's kind of by Henry's Lake, right? Is
Yes.
that the one?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, again, they built that. And then all of a sudden,
It was like their second season in that
Yeah,
building.
yeah.
And it was like, oh crap, what are we going to do? And they had a very successful season,
Yeah.
but they didn't have the tourism.
Yeah.
And so the ticket sales were not quite as much as what they had been before. But they're going to be okay. You know, I mean, it's just like all of us, we just buckle down. We're going to get through this. We're going to be okay.
Yeah. No, I think local, and thank you so much, Renee, and check out her podcast, and
East
you
Idaho
need your car
Entrepreneurs.
worked on. I
Yeah,
highly recommend
Oswald Service.
Oswald.
That's right. Renee, we've got a question here that came up in the chat. How have part accessibility and supply chain issues impacted your business and the industry? I found on the aviation maintenance level, some parts have been unavailable for 6 months now. So give us kind of an idea of how it's affected the Oswalds with that.
I love that question because not many people think about that. You know, we're dependent. We don't have a whole stock room in the back. We're very dependent on our parts suppliers. So we were terrified because a lot of those are not domestic, right? They're imported. And thankfully, we have relationships with multiple suppliers. So we don't just have one place where we needed to go to get something necessarily. We've had to be creative with some of the things that we've done, but we've been able to get the parts pretty much that we've needed. But we were very scared. So I appreciate that, you know, the situation that you're in aviation, because you can't fix something when you don't have something to replace it with.
Yeah. So far, so good on
So
your
far, so
supply.
good.
Yeah.
Oh, you
Let's
just
do knock
jinxed
on
me.
wood. No, because there have been. I mean, we saw that with toilet paper. If we look specifically, and everyone just calmed down. We've got enough. Just-
Thankfully, we did
anyway.
not need toilet paper to repair
Yeah,
cars.
that is a great thing.
It is.
That is.
But I do have to tell you, this is kind of a complete side note, but I have to say, and again, knock on wood, not one of our members of our team have been sick.
Yeah.
Like they took this seriously. And I think that sometimes you look at little mom and pop places or smaller businesses, and you know, maybe we tend to not take stuff seriously. And I'm just so proud of our team because they've kept themselves healthy, understanding the impact. When you have one person out of a 10-person team,
Yeah.
it's huge.
Yep.
And so for all of these little businesses that we've been able to keep our teams going, kudos,
Yeah.
you know, like congratulations.
Yeah. No, I agree. So, Well, we really appreciate you, Ranae, and all you do for our local community. And
Thank you.
again, anybody that's interested in hearing more from Holly tomorrow, please register, and we'll kick it to Bryan.
Yeah, and Frosty's put the link to get registered for tomorrow's Cultivate Business class that Holly will be going through from 10:30 to noon tomorrow. The registration link's on there, and we appreciate all the comments and the questions, and appreciate Will Jensen from the RBDC up in Rexburg. Absolutely phenomenal information. And Holly Behling, I encourage you to recommend to contact her if you have any questions on your PPP EIDL or any kind of tax questions. She's located out in Ammon, is that right? And then Ranae Oswald, absolutely great to have you on. And and we put the link for your podcast in there as well for East Idaho entrepreneurs. So
Thank you.
it's all in the chat boxes there. And we'll wrap it up for today, right about 3 o'clock. What we'd like to keep everything on time. So thank you, Tyler Price, with the Small Business Development Center here in Idaho Falls, and encourage if your business needs any kind of coaching, reach out to us at the Small Business Development Center. It's free coaching that we can help your business wrap out the year of 2020. And look forward to 2021. Have a Merry Christmas, everyone, and look forward to look for things coming out. We got some big things going to happen next year with these broadcasts. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Good job, guys.
Thank you.